Oh, there you go. I was looking for you. Before they get up, got a couple of minutes to turn. Now remember, those of you who were here last week will remember that I mentioned tomorrow is a very, very, very special day in the calendar, and it's National Rum Day. So you must drink rum. This is Yes, force yourself to. Actually, I discovered, I thought it was International Rum Day because that's what it set up in the off-license in our shopping centre, but I did a little check on it, and International Rum Day, well, the Navy celebrates Rum Day on October the 21st, which is the anniversary of the death of Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar. And you know the story of Nelson's blood? Anybody doesn't know the story of Nelson's blood? Okay. When Nelson died at Trafalgar, legend says that his body was preserved in a cask of rum or brandy. But you know, rum because the Navy always had lots and lots and lots of rum because the sailors had rum ration. And and he was sent back to England, and when the sailors realised, they tapped into the barrel or the cask, and through the voyage they were drinking it. So when he was decanted at the other end, apparently his head and his torso were in a pretty bad state of disrepair by then because he hadn't been tickled anymore. So when the Navy toast to celebrate the winning of the Battle of Trafalgar is a tot of Nelson's blood, which is where we get Nelson's blood from, right? Okay. So, it is probably entirely untrue, the whole thing, right? So don't worry about it. I mean, the Navy would never, ever, ever spoil a good story for the sake of the truth. MEG! Megville.
And we're allowed to eat cake in lieu of drinking rum.
Is that not for you?
You said she's not drinking rum.
I'm not drinking it. It's quite
to
sick.
get burdened with a fever.
There you go. The story I have to tell you, I got from an Irishman. And it goes something like this. When the news came that Sean Kelly was coming back from his job as a policeman in Burma, retiring, the village was so excited. He was moneyed. He was back, retired, and he was on £1 a day in a time when a man could go to the races on a Saturday with a shilling and come back with change. The whole village was excited at the homecoming. There would be dancing, there would be fiddles, there would be a feast. But his brother, Eamon, he hadn't married so well. I have to say that Sean, when he was in Burma, met an English woman, and the word was she was very proper. So that was another to do, because they would be staying in the house. And Sean had married Hannah O'Flaherty. And Hannah, well, she was a good-hearted lass. But you know, she spent most of the time in the kitchen drinking tea, and with the kids, bump, 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 around her feet. The house that they lived in had been the mother's, of course, and when she died, well, they just moved in. And when the mother was alive, the place was as neat as a pin. So when it was realised that the party would have to be in their house, what were they to do? Well, the neighbours, being good neighbours, all mucked in. They set to, they whitewashed the cottage, outside and in. They laid green rushes at the muddy part of the door, and they hauled out Grandma's old bed and took it into the yard. The ticking was, well, heaved against the stone wall and beaten till there was hardly anything left. So much dust was gotten out of it. The sheets were washed so well that it practically got the flour brand out of them. And cutlery, well, was not good enough. So there was cutlery to borrow, there was crockery, The table had to be butted together with the neighbours. It was going to be a great to-do. And Hannah, in the midst of all this, just let them get on with it, and then suddenly said, "Oh, and it'll have to be shivery, shaky pudding for dessert. You know, that stuff that everybody has at fancy parties." So jelly and trifle featured largely on the menu. People were cooking around and contributed, a bit like here at Red Hill. And when the morning came, Hannah was just checking around, everything was fine, the trifle was there, but she had discovered that the hundreds and thousands that she wanted on that trifle were not there. They'd forgotten the hundreds and thousands. So she got her dozy husband up out of bed and said, "Get into town and get thousands and hundreds, and if you can't get them, get wee silver balls." And off he went on the bike. Now, I don't know if it was because he was half asleep, but by the time he got into Dingle, he really couldn't remember what it was he had to get. The only thing he remembered, and probably because there was some connection, was the wee silver balls. And at every shop he went to, they didn't really know what he meant. So, of course, he adjourned to the pub. Now, in Dingle, as you know, Foxy John's is a pub, but it also has a shop attached. And so he was having a pint there and telling the man next to him of all his troubles and the to-do that was going to be on in the house that night. When the fella said, "Silver balls, you say? Oh, you don't need to go any further than next door. There's a bicycle shop there. So in goes Eamon and he buys a box of ball bearings, takes them back quite merrily and slowly and wobbly on the bike, and gets back in time for his brother's arrival. Oh, he was looking smart and trim. He was the eldest, right enough. And the young woman with him, well, she was dressed beautifully, picked up her skirts to get over the threshold, and seemed smart enough and smiling enough when she got inside. Well, everything was going fine. Of course, all the neighbours had been invited too, and they were all in their best and on their best behaviour. And the food was all set out, and he set to, and when the trifle was brought out, and people tried some of this shivery, shaky pudding with silver balls, they ate, and they found there was bits that their teeth couldn't quite get into. Some people, I mean, they wanted to spit them out, but they couldn't. There was an Englishwoman there. And some people said, "Oh, they just go outside to check on the weather," and they managed to go outside and get rid of them. But for the very polite, they were forced to swallow. Now, I won't go into the party and the drinking and the fiddling. Yeah, I'll leave that to your imagination. You do that enough yourselves. But the people who went home in the village, well, what a night they had. The pain of it. People were up and down, thought they were dying, wished they were dying, and it was terrible. The village was very quiet the next morning, except out comes Mary to the well, and Elizabeth comes out too. "Oh, Mary," she said, "how were you? How were you last night?" And Mary shook her head. "No, not good, not good. Did you have any of that Hannah's trifle with the wee silver ball?" "Oh," said Elizabeth, "I did." She said, "I thought I was done for. Oh, the pain," she said, "the pain. Himself was about to go get the priest for me. I was that bad." And Elizabeth went on and she said, "Oh, and how were you, Mary?" Mary said, I had a dull ache in my right side. I thought it was appendicitis. I was up this morning just as the crow crowed, and I just was wishing, if only, if you'll pardon me, if only I could pass some wind, I might get some relief. And I came down the stairs gently," she said. "And when I got to the foot of the stairs, I thought, I'll just light the fire. And as I bent down to light the fire, it happened. I let go a great big fart and I shot the cat." adults, obviously, this one, but I do tell stories here hoping that you take them home and spread them around. So this story is more for children. But, you know, there's a lesson in it just the same.
Everybody bending over.
No, I'm not going to go there. Right. So this story comes from Palestine, and I read it recently, and this is the way I tell it. There once was a farmer who was very poor. He lived in a very small house in the village of Cyrus. And the house he lived in was small. It had 2 lemon trees out the front, and the path went from the front door. And there was a garden, all enclosed in a wall, that his wife grew vegetables and herbs. And they had 7 children. And in the little field that they had, he did what he could, but they worked long hours. And they never seemed to have enough money. One morning he came down to breakfast looking a bit worried. And his wife said to him, "Oh, what's the matter? Didn't you sleep?" "Oh," he said, "I had this dream, the strangest dream." He said, "I woke up and I remembered that in my dream I had to go to Jerusalem and stand at the Damascus gate and wait. And then I woke up." "Oh," said his wife, "what do you think? What do you think that means?" He said, "I don't know, but it's bothered me since I got up." Well, he had his breakfast and went out to work and one thing and another. He forgot about it. And that night, he dreamt exactly the same dream. And on the 3rd morning, when he came down after the 3rd dream, he said to his wife, 3 times, "I've dreamt that same thing about going to Jerusalem and standing at the Damascus gate and waiting to see what will happen." His wife said, "Well, you best go. Why don't you go? I'll manage without you. What do you think?" He said, "Oh, all right then." So she gave him some bread and olives, and he packed them in a little sack and he carried them off and he walked to Jerusalem. He didn't have any money to hire a mule or a donkey. It took him 3 days. And when he got to the Damascus gate, it's a beautiful gate. If you've been there, you'll know what it looks like. It's all crenulated on the top. And he walked through Damascus gate and he thought, well, I'll just wait here beside the gate. Put down the sack. And he watched people coming in the gate and going out, some selling wares and carrying burdens, and others bought things and going out again. And nothing happened. Nobody spoke to him. A couple of people thought he was begging and threw coins on the top of his sack, but that was it really. And when dusk came, they were closing the gates and all the shops were closed, so he just huddled down in a corner of the wall there. A dog came over and sniffed him suspiciously, but really nobody bothered about him at all. Next morning, bright and early, he went to the well, washed his face, had a drink, came back, stood at the gate. The gate was opened, people came in, people went out. The sky was blue, and some clouds, big birds. Again, all day. By the 3rd day, he wasn't really sure that he just had to wait. I wasn't sure what he was waiting for. And it was then that a man came up to him and tapped him gently on the shoulder. "Excuse me," he said, "I own that leather shop over there. I'm a leather worker, and I've seen you here for 3 days, just standing. What's your story?" So the farmer told him of his dream. The leather man looked at him and laughed out loud. "Well, you what? You've come all this way, 3 days to get here. You've stayed for 3 days, 6 days without working, no money, and you're telling me that you're just following a dream. What? How do you think the world's going to get on if people follow their dreams? I mean, what a ridiculous idea." And before the man could say anything, he went on. He said, "I've had dreams before. I had a dream for 7 nights that there was a place, a little village, beginning with S-R, I can't even remember the name. But anyway, there was a little house, had 2 lemon trees in the front, and between the 2 lemon trees, there was treasure buried. 7 times I dreamed that. Did I go and look at my shop? No, I did not. I would have..." And then he realised he was talking to himself. He was heading home to the treasure.
Of course, Meg was pleased and proud to be the support actor.